Food has long been a connector of cultures, one that feeds the body in its barest form and fuels camaraderie on a higher social level. This season, we explore the role of food in our Asian culture in connecting people and forging friendships. We flew in Michelin-starred chefs from Singapore and Bangkok to be part of our Malaysian eating cultures and share with them our dining scene, both street and fine.
We call it here in Banjai.
Well, this one has that chewiness.
Very well done, very well done.
To exchange and learn how differently we eat. And, more importantly, how much likeness we also share. This is Chef on Chef 3, Crossing Borders. Many restaurants have come and gone in Kuala Lumpur in the past decades, but one French establishment has steadily held its place in the hearts of diners. Lafite at Shangri-La Hotel Kuala Lumpur has stood the tests of time, standing tall since its founding in 1985, with a menu that is constantly refreshed while staying true to its identity as a truly French restaurant. Lafite's latest chapter is spearheaded by chef Scott Henderson, who took over as executive chef of the hotel in March 2019.
Cuisine it's light, concept based on some local ingredients, but also some modern French as well. I still like cooking classic food, so the idea is to be able to amalgamate a lot of things together. My style, my classic style, with a light ambience, as well as understanding what the local guests like to eat. The way I look at it is I like to concentrate on 2 or 3 flavors. I don't ever put too many different flavors on the dishes because that's just my style.
He steps into the big shoes of a restaurant that is favoured by celebrities and the well-heeled to royalty.
People sometimes have a stigma that hotel restaurants are very exclusive, but honestly they're like any other restaurant that you go to.
Hi.
Hello, sir. How are you?
How are you?
A long time.
Yeah.
Today, he is visited by the decorated chef Emmanuel Strubon, who proudly holds 2 Michelin stars for his restaurants Saint-Pierre and Shukua in Singapore.
To have a restaurant who has stand so long against time in the evolution of the food scene in Malaysia and the evolution of food scene here specifically in Kuala Lumpur, to have kept its reputation of still being pretty much on top of the list, I think is quite an achievement. So I think that the kind of food we had tonight is exactly what is expected from this kind of establishment.
Chef Emmanuel is joined for dinner by Chef Evert Onderbecki from Soleil Restaurant, who has long looked up to him.
I was excited to have a dinner with Chef Emmanuel because you don't get the chance often to dine with a chef like that.
Chef Scott and his team are raring to fire up the first course.
I said hello and welcome to Lafite. Okay, for the amuse-bouche, we're going to do a potato ice cream served with Kaluga caviar. Some brioche breadcrumbs.
Our guests are given a cold, sweet start with potato ice cream amuse-bouche, served with brioche crumble and Kaluga sustainable caviar, topped with Granny Smith apple julienne.
So what do? Do we kill it? Do we make it beautiful? Sorry. If I don't know it's a potato ice cream, I do not detect the potato itself. The brioche in terms of flavor is overwhelming because of the roasted crumb. That's my take. But having said that, the combination works very well. It's I like the fact it's a packaged ice cream. We saw it on the video, and that technique breaks all the texture, the potential frozen water inside. It's a very smooth ice cream in terms of texture. I like also the crumb adds back some form of crunch into that dish, so it works. The green apple gives that a bit of acidity into it. I can't fault the dish very much. Besides the fact that, again, I think the potato itself doesn't dominate. So if I look at this, for instance, when I scoop it out, I've got more crumb than potatoes. That's where the dominance come from.
The way he look at it is different from my point of view. The level that he's cooking at is different from what I do. I actually learned a lot myself by listening to his comments.
If I had to do the dish, my only comment is the ratio. I'd love to have more caviar.
The feedback is for the potato ice cream, you can't really taste it's a potato ice cream if you didn't mention.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. How's baked potato taste? Okay. It's okay. I was a little nervous to begin with, obviously, but I think as it went on, more comfortable with the food we serve.
Chef Scott is off to a steady start. For the first course, Chef Scott brings to the table brined and hand-folded terrine foie gras.
And this just can go into the refrigerator straight away. Let me just place onto the tray now.
Served with mi-cuit smoked duck, pickled pear and Sauternes sweet wine jelly.
And then what we do is we salt it. I do it on conventional smoke, I do a hot sugar smoke. You basically want to put some heat under here, which is going to start melting the sugar, and then it will start smoking. So the smoke travels upwards. So the idea is that you cook it at the same time as smoking it. But you don't want to cook it directly, so you need a little bit of a gap. There we have our smoked duck.
It's a dish that takes a lot of technique to execute. An effort that paid off for Chef Scott in Chef Emmanuel's eyes.
A lot of techniques, from the foie gras, the smoking, the brining, to that's a few elements going there. So there's some skill shown, I think, from that dish.
We will have to taste it. Video.
I'm unfamiliar with the technique of that mi-cuit kind of thing. The fact that it's hand manipulated and then pretty much like pureed through hand and then rolled. Yep. So to me, I would think that maybe that dish could be a little bit colder. That gives that little bit of a mushy texture on the foie gras. So I would like, because it's called foie gras, I would like a bit like a terrine. And having said that, when I serve a terrine, I would leave it outside for about 10 minutes for it to be a bit softer. But there's something about the texture which is a bit funny. Taste is good. It doesn't have any form of bitterness, which to me means it's not oxidized, which means that the foie gras is not an all foie gras. It's a frozen product, but it's not all in the sense it has not been left outside when it will turn like green skin around it, which is a very good thing. The combination of Sauternes and pear is a classic. Sauternes pear brioche. Now, it's exactly the former dish. I think it needs to be eaten together. When I put the foie gras and the pear together, it works. That crunch. Now I've got texture into my foie gras. The foie gras being a little bit on the, I wouldn't use the word the bland side, but it's very soft on the tongue, so that the pear lifts with the acidity. He mentioned the word sugar in the pickling, which it's not overwhelming. It's like sweet and sour, and I guess that will come with the jelly.
I agree also that the texture of the foie gras is unusual for me. But when you eat everything together, it makes sense.
I think what we have also from the first dish and the second dish is no surprise. It's not a very creative dish. It's something which we have seen before. I guess a restaurant like Lafite, which is such a well-established restaurant, have a clientele which is expecting that kind of classical French food. The food we had tonight is definitely classical French. There's no doubt. And we're talking about high-end fine dining. We're talking about escargots and duck confit. When it comes to elevated French cuisine, it was very decent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say majority of my food is modern European. It has its classical background and it has its roots from how I've grown up through food.
So a funny thing is, and again, it's very personal. The use of microcress is interesting. I had the same problem in my kitchen for a long time. The guys are putting any kind of cress anyhow, just because it's green, it makes it pretty.
But they don't know the taste of the different cresses.
That's the problem. So here, On the first course, we had the same cress here, which is a baby sorrel, red vein sorrel. Give a little bit of acidity, works very well on the first dish. Here, I would say the red vein sorrel also works well, but the mustard cress doesn't work. So I would say I'd rather not to have any cress, or rather to have a cress which will detract on the final flavor. But again, it's details. If I do something different with that dish, I would probably do a classic terrine.
Terrine, yeah, it's more traditional. It's a more traditional way of doing it, for sure. For the terrine, again, I just think for me, I like to use a small piece of foie gras rather than a whole piece, just to break it up on the plate a little bit.
For the second course, line-caught Atlantic sea bass takes the spotlight. Lightly seared just to brown the outside while still retaining its juiciness inside. It is served with crab mousse sweetened with scallop bouillon.
Make sure your scallops are nice and dry. Blend slightly. But basically, you end up with a mousse like this. And then we're going to add the crab meat to the scallop mousse. So these are zucchini flowers. Generally they can go quite open, which is very nice. As you start to fill, it will start to fill the actual flour. Then to get a nice shape, because I still want to keep the nice cylinder.
I think it's got a nice kitchen. The packagette, the Thermomix, it's well equipped, very well equipped, it's nice. Same, always very classical combination, so the stuffing of the zucchini flowers. I'm looking forward to taste the fish because I think to me, when I hire a chef and I have to put my chef on a specific line, if he will be on the stove, I will always pass him a piece of fish and say, cook the fish.
It's simple, yet it's got quite a lot of flavors on. When you look at the dish, it's quite a simple dish, but there's a lot of flavors there.
Hi, how are you?
So far so good, chef.
Good,
very
good.
good.
So this is our, we have a sea bass, Atlantic sea bass, which is line caught. Then I serve it with a stuffed crab mousse, little zucchini, some Swiss chard, and then a crisp potato. Okay.
We saw you making the sauce. That looks promising. That sauce looks really interesting. Where is the sea bass from?
It's Atlantic sea bass, so from the coast of France.
Okay, nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Hot plate, always a good choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Star the sauce. The ginger, lemongrass. I like that. That's.
You like that?
Yes, that I like.
Asian
Lemon.
influence.
Definitely. It lights up everything. Mildly plain, but it's there. The crab is definitely there. There is Asian element into it. That's the ginger. I think chives, and I imagine touch of lemongrass, something which is also into the mousse. So you detect all those elements. But if I had, that's what I was saying, if I had a top quality scallop and a live crab, I would have separated my element to play them individually. My favorite dish was a sea bass. So that dish on itself, the cooking of the fish and that sauce which went with it, to me was exquisite. We also need to sit down and look at the dish. I would use the word from the receiving end, not from, we always look at the dish from the giving hand, but we need to look at that dish, all our dishes, from the receiving part, like sit down here and look at your dish. You know, how does it look like? How does it break down? He says, as you say, I'm sure that if he was sitting and had his dish seated into the environment we are now, he would also say, man, I need more sauce on that dish. So that's a process as chefs. And for any chef watching this show, I think it's very important that we sit down and we taste our food like a client would eat our food.
So you actually do that for every dish?
Every single dish. We not only do it with a dish, but I want to do it with a whole menu.
It's a small hiccup, but thankfully nothing that derailed the dish too far off the good course it is making.
A little salt, huh?
Next up, Chef Scott brings some red meat to the show with a juicy lamb loin.
The long loin, I like it because it's nice and tender, and this is the finished product. So like so. So once we slow cook it, the flavor of the thyme will go through to the lamb.
Cooked sous vide before it is finished in a pan just to caramelize the surface. Then served with Jerusalem artichoke, bruschon mushroom, grello onions, and crisp grains.
Again, a lot of technique, I see. The espuma, sous vide.
I don't do sous vide. I stopped doing sous vide for a while. reason is one day one guy came to me and said, well, you know, my mother can do sous vide. And I was struck by that comment because it's true. I mean, the technique of sous vide is only a technique of putting under vacuum bag and then at a certain time a center temperature. We are losing a little bit of the skills of a chef, a rôtisseur, the guys who are going to be on the stove and roasting that meat and cooking that meat.
So yeah, in part I agree with his comment, but I also think that yes, restaurants nowadays are all about consistency. I think some meats do need to be sous vide, can help it.
When you're running that kind of a lot of outlet and you need to making sure that your food is consistent, sous vide is a good way to go. Thank you very much.
The main course, lamb loin with the grilled mushroom, a grilled onion, and also the grains, crispy grain, and also the crispy sancho.
I love Jerusalem artichoke.
Me too. I like to work with it. I would like the lamb maybe to be cooked more traditional. It will give a different result.
That's the problem with sous vide. That's the kind of texture you have with sous vide. So you lose a little bit. It gives so the way the protein reacts at low temperature, it doesn't bind the protein, and therefore that gives you that kind of everything is the same. It's medium rare. I mean, it's more on the medium side for this one, but from heart to top. I'm not going to wrap it yet, but it's a meal which is not a surprising meal. It's not something wow kind of. I don't think it's all nice. It's all good. And I think it fits perfectly well the reputation and the environment of Lafite. And I think chef does a pretty decent job in terms of keeping that line of techniques, and everything is great. It was a good meal. It was a good meal, but it was just a good meal. We do a difficult job. It's hard to judge our colleagues. It's hard to, on one hand, to be honest, we do it all the time. And when you go to any restaurant, you come to mine, I go to yours, and that's what we will do.
Yeah, it's an unusual thing to do, so it's quite good. Obviously, they know what they're talking about. They know how the flavors should be. So for us to be right and perform correctly, it's obviously always a challenge.
Both chefs agree that as a dish, it's not bad, just not quite how they would prepare it.
Okay, for dessert, we have our creme caramel.
Chef Scott goes back to classic creme caramel.
Then the actual creme caramel that we baked. A little bit more caramel cream, more jelly around the outside, and then we will top this with a little ginger ice cream.
To match the richness of the caramel, our guests are each served a glass of a robust Martell cognac that enriched the cream and added fragrance to the caramel of the dessert.
It's very funny. We drink cognac a very different way from our Asian friends here. That's the way I like to have a cognac. At the very end of the meal, we finish.
Here they can drink that.
They can have a bottle during a meal.
From beginning to end.
It's very different. My dad would buy a bottle and he would keep it for months. I mean, just like that sip. And that's already quite nice.
Okay.
A real pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Personally, for me, it's a bit too much of the caramel taste, but that's my personal opinion, probably.
If I look at techniques first, I would say that, I don't know if the camera can capture that, but the fact there's absolutely no bubbles into the creme caramel means it's been cooked perfectly well. So it didn't go to the boiling point, when sometimes you got creme caramel with a lot of little bubbles inside, which for us say, oh wow, my guy cannot cook a creme caramel. So that guy definitely can cook a creme caramel. It's perfect. It's very smooth. It has that kind of texture. It's very velvety. It stays here at the back of the plate. It just like slips nicely. I like the touch of ginger ice cream. Again, it's a pacotized ice cream, so there's similar texture, also very velvety, very creamy. And I think effectively the combination of ginger into that dish lifts a little bit that spiciness lift. The addition also of crumb gives a texture into the dish, because crumb caramel tend to be a little bit like, everything being in the same texture. Now, a little on the heavy side, maybe that addition on the video is we see him adding that cream. So we got ice cream, we got a cream caramel, and adding a cream again into it. It's like maybe that would not have been necessary. If it's real Sauterne, it's wasted Sauterne, because I don't taste the sauternes. There's a caramel inside it, which makes it nice. It's not a bad taste. It's just that we could use, I would say, a cheap sweet white wine rather than a sauterne. It's a heavy dessert. It's a heavy finish. But again, go back to the question earlier. Classical French dessert. We were joking with crêpes Suzette earlier on. It's not any lighter. Yeah. So when you think of classical, we're talking about classical dessert. We're thinking about profiterole, mousse au chocolat. So the dessert, the last touch, is really essential as your very last memory of the meal. I would say, you remember Lafite? Oh yeah, crème brûlée. Not to, I mean, it's a kind of comment we will have because that's what will last very often into people's minds. That last bite is so important. It's a way our manager, our maître d'hôtel will say bye-bye to you. That's that little additional touch which will make that, oh, I remember that specific thing about it. I'll have another bite of it. I have a sweet tooth. The dessert for me was the one which was a little bit lacking, but again, it's not Chef Scott's fault. I would say most of the time in an organization we've got a pastry division taking care of this, so maybe that division needs a little bit more guidance.
It is a very strong dessert to finish with. The idea is to be like, for me the idea is because a French restaurant, classical French, you have dessert, you're finished, you're done, you don't need anything else. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Hi. How was everything?
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, overall good. I enjoyed it. I think we've been very critical during the meal. Is
It's a good thing.
Yes, it is. I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's about giving points or whatever. I think it's just thinking, hey, you guys are doing a great job considering where we are, considering what you do, and also I imagine you must be busy with the rest of your hotel, right? So congratulations, it was a great meal. Thank you, Chef.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Oh, sorry. Cheers.
Cheers. Chef. Oh.
Chef Scott is the latest of a long line of chefs to carry on the legacy of Lafite, and he is effectively doing so with his slightly more playful rendition of haute French cuisine. One secret to longevity is the ability to move on with times, and Chef Scott is lending that relevance with a slight experimentation in Lafite's kitchen, while still staying true to its spirit.
For me, I mean, I'm very open. I take guest feedback quite seriously, otherwise you never grow as a chef.
Very much no expectation. I came here, the last meal I had at Lafite was over 20 years ago when I was in Malaysia. And I've seen that restaurant going up and down with a different chef and changing personality because of the chef. I'm very happy to see Chef Scott leading that place because he's definitely to the good direction.
Up next, another long-time contender in the KL fine dining scene. Sage at the Gardens Mall gets a visit from one Michelin-starred chef Heikel Johari of Alma by Juan Amador of Singapore. How will the wheelchair-bound yet sharp as a knife Chef Heikel take to the cuisine of Chef Daniel Chong?
But actually, do you guys really care about whose food is better? Do you know, right?
Chef on Chef is brought to you by Martel. Drink responsibly.